Okay, hello, this is Paul Beauchemin, and we're going to get started here. We're going to talk about how you can advertise your firm like Warren Buffett's companies do. And we're going to do that using psychology and math, and that's what we do here at Digital Marketing Returns. And hopefully you'll find this very interesting. We have quite a bit of experience doing marketing and with math, and you'll see in a second. Just by way of a background, who am I? Let me just share that with you. So basically I come from an engineering background, and I've always been a problem solver all my life and solved multiple technical challenges. And about 6 years ago, I saw an opportunity in what's called software as a service, sometimes called SaaS. And I actually went out and hired people, and first we tested the market and found if there was a problem, and we saw the problem. And we went out and hired people and built this software. And we did a small beta test, and people liked it. And but then at the end of the test, we had no way to get customers. There was no method that I knew of. And so what I had to do is go out and learn how to market like an expert. And so over the next couple of years, I spent a lot of time and money going to various seminars, reading all the historical experts in marketing, and learned really how to market really well. And especially got in touch with a guy named Perry Marshall, who is a guru in the AdWords space. And that combined with my statistics background really gave a lot of synergy to marketing and the world of digital marketing specifically. And I started a couple agencies. One was focused on private investigators, and because their primary clients are lawyers and attorneys, I moved into helping attorneys solve their marketing problems as well. I'm married, have 4 grown children, and probably my proudest accomplishment really is a recent trip I made to the top of Pikes Peak. And I'm not one of these guys that cycles all the time. My wife and I probably bike about 1,000 miles a year here in New York, and it's always fairly flat where we go. But a friend of mine had biked out in Colorado, and he said, geez, it was no problem. The hills are gradual. It's not that steep. So we signed up for this trip, and we went out to Colorado. And when we got there, I looked at those mountains. I said, oh, my, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. So before the tour started, it was a 7-day bike tour. We drove to the top of Pikes Peak because I thought that might be the only opportunity to really see it. And I'll tell you, it was actually a harrowing drive. There's few guardrails going up the mountains. It's quite steep, and when we got out of the car and walked around, I felt quite dizzy at 14,000 feet. But I figured I probably would not ride it. But we spent the next 6 days riding around Colorado at various summits, and about the 4th day, my wife got altitude sickness and had to drop out. So the last couple of days, I was riding on my own. And the last day of the ride was to climb Pikes Peak. And I didn't think I could do it, but I decided to give it a shot. And we started about 5:30 in the morning. And, I took my own pace. And, eventually I got about halfway up. I started seeing people coming down. And I said, wow, these guys are good. But it turns out they had turned around, and they were coming back down because they had failed to make it. About 2/3 of the way up was the last rest area, and I saw some young people that were probably 20 years younger than me, and they had decided to give it up as well. But I kept pushing, and I got to about 13,000 feet, and the tour organizer pulled me aside because my bike was pretty wobbly, and I was panting pretty heavily. There's not much air up there, and he told me I ought to stop. But I could see the top of the mountain, and I realized it was probably my only chance to do this, and I ought to do it. And so I stopped for about 20 minutes and rested, and then pushed on. And I made it to the top, and it's probably one of my personal highest achievements, I feel. And You know, what I bring to the business really is kind of wrapped up in the story. Why I tell you this is because I do two things really well. One is I problem solve very well, and the other thing is I'm quite persistent, and I go to the end. So if you were to work with me, those are the two attributes I really do well. So let's get into marketing here. Talk about marketing. So let me ask you, is your marketing a slot machine or a vending machine? See, if you go to the casinos and you put your money in a slot machine, you're not sure what you're going to get out. And that's how most people's marketing is. They put some money out for this, AdWords, or for radio advertising and billboard advertising or TV spots, or, sometimes in the paper or whatever, but they're never quite sure if they're going to get something out. Marketing ought to be like a vending machine. You put a certain amount of money in and you get something out, and you know what you're going to get in return. And that's how marketing really ought to be. So what I found is that there's two key pillars to marketing very well. One is psychology. That is knowing the psychology of how to persuade the people, the prospects, that you want to serve, okay? And being able to know that helps reduce the cost of acquisition, and it helps fill the pipeline very, very fast. The second pillar is math. So those that can afford to spend the most to acquire a client will be the most successful. Now, you can do that two different ways. One is high margin offerings. That's like the Apple computer model. They offer very high margin products. And the other is to have the lowest cost of client acquisition. And in order to do that, you really have to know your numbers. It's very important to really understand your numbers. What is the cost of acquisition? And this is something few people really know in business. So let me talk about psychology first. There's a guy out in California. His name's Robert Cialdini. He's very probably the world's best-known guy on the psychology of persuasion. He wrote this book called Influence and a couple other books on persuasion. And I want to review some of the key points that he points to when you are trying to persuade people to hire you, okay? So number one is this principle called reciprocity. So when you give something away, people feel a sense of obligation to do something in return. And a lot of times, businesses will give away calendars or coffee cups or something like that. In the law business, a lot of people will give away free consultation. A lot of times you see people giving away their books. These all create a sense of obligation, so people feel obliged to perhaps hire you. And this is something that's really important. It's a basic human characteristics, and you should use these kind of persuasion psychologies whenever you are trying to work with somebody. So one of the rules of reciprocity is you want to be the first to give something, and to do it unexpectedly. This creates more of a sense of obligation to people. Another persuasion trigger is what's called authority, and we've all heard the term appeal to authority. And so, we display our certificates on the wall. People dress in a suit. This gives you a sense of showing how important you are. Another way to do that is to get others to tell prospects how great you are. So it's hard to really go out and say, geez, I'm the greatest in the world, and really get a lot of credibility. But if you can get somebody else to do that for you, a partner, a past client, a current client, this is why referrals is so powerful, because they attribute to you this sense of authority and expertise when they refer business to you. It's also another easy way to do this is when your receptionist takes a call, you can have her give a brief blurb, a bio of you that builds up your expertise and authority. So this is something that can be done in-house pretty easily. Another principle is called scarcity. People are often worried more about what they'll lose than what they'll gain. and they often respond to deadlines or limits with urgency. So if you have some kind of a special offer, some attorneys may offer some discounted service. If you have that model, you ought to have a deadline for it. So that is an important trigger as well. Then there's another one called consistency and commitment. So the buying process is a series of making small commitments. And when people do this, they have to feel internally congruent, internally consistent. And when they do that, they keep doing the same thing. They keep following the same path. So whenever, there are some attorneys that offer an initial consult for a small fee, and this builds this commitment to hire you. So this is another way, and actually consistency and commitment is more powerful than reciprocity in terms of what you build. But of course, there's the hurdle of getting people to pay you the small fee up front. So a lot of people go with the free consultation, and but others will charge once you become well positioned, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more. Having the initial consult fee will actually work much better for you. And as I said, referrers are more likely to keep using your firm once they refer you. So if you ever thought about it, if you refer someone to a great restaurant that you went to, it's likely that you're going to keep talking well about that restaurant unless you have a really bad experience. So getting people to refer you is a great way for them to use you for other services. Next is the principle of liking. People say yes to those that they like. And this is why whenever you talk to someone, most of the conversation should be about them. And what I see a lot happening is in attorney advertising is they talk a lot about themselves. They're trying to build up their own authority rather than talking about the problems, pains, and situations of the people, the clients that they're trying to serve. And so it's very important. I'm kind of a quiet person by nature, and a lot of times I'd go to a party and I'd start talking to someone, and I'd ask a few questions, and most of the conversation they'd be talking. And at the end of the conversation, they say, wow, you're a great conversationalist, even though I had said little, because people like to talk about themselves. There's another part of liking. People, like those that are similar. And there's a whole field called neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, where actually they teach people actually how to kind of mimic those that they're talking to. So if someone is, got their head on their arm and they're on their elbow or something, or they're leaning forward or they're leaning back, if you kind of mimic their behavior, they tend to like you more. People also like it when you pay them compliments. So if somebody refers you, refers someone to you, it's nice to send them a thank you card, and they'll feel really good about it. And so that's part of liking as well. And the last Cialdini trigger I want to talk about is social proof, and this has to do with putting up testimonials and case studies. That's why referring is so powerful. It's the ultimate proof of social proof, okay? When someone refers business to you, this is social proof. But, your website should have case studies and testimonials of people that have, you've done business with and, like your business. This is really good because a lot of people base their decision on what they read other people saying about you. So whenever you're advertising, there's an important thing to think about. When you have a message that you want to advertise, you ought to be thinking about this comment from Robert Collier. He's one of the famous marketers. He said, always enter the conversation already taking place in the customer's mind. So if you're in the business of divorce, you ought to be talking to people about the conversations going in their mind about the possibility of losing custody of their child, or the possibility of losing marital assets. You want to talk about what's going on in their mind to help, and that helps with liking, that helps with all kinds of these persuasion techniques. And this is really important when you advertise, is to try to enter the conversation already taking place in their mind. So this is an example of different conversations that people have. Now, most of the advertising, if you look on the internet, talks about the attorney, the advertiser. And if you look at most of the ads, they're all about us. We've had the $4 million settlement, 30 years experience, board certified, whatever. Most of them are conversations are about the advertiser. And that's because most people are thinking about themselves, and so when they advertise, they think about themselves, and they're not thinking about the most important person, that's the customer. So some firms will talk about the customer, but I want to suggest to you that there are many, many different ways that you can talk to people. You can talk about your customer's worst enemy. For example, if you're in the business of helping people with foreclosures, their worst enemy might be the bank. If you're in the business of divorce, their worst enemy might be the other woman or something like that. And you can talk about all these things: negative forces or beliefs, positive forces, thing that the customer or client likes or hates. All these different ways, and actually there's several thousand different ways to really talk to your customer in a way that enters the conversation going on in their head. And these are all just many different ways. And then there's language attributes you can use with these. So I want to talk about 5 different keys to making your practice thrive. The first has to do with differentiation. Now, when you go to law school, you get your degree, you come out, put your shingle up. How different are you than the guy 2 blocks down the street? This is the big problem with attorneys. We try to broadcast how great we are, but most of us don't really talk in terms of differentiation. How different is your service than other people's service? Second has to do with positioning. So when people come to see you in your office, how are you positioned? How are you positioned will determine how many people, how much traffic you get, as well as how easy it is to close someone that comes in for a consultation of some kind. So positioning is very important. Then there's traffic, and this is the number of people that see your ad or see, somehow become aware of your service and start to call you, okay? This is what I talking about when I talk to traffic. And you want to, this is a numbers game, and, there are many, many ways to get traffic, people to call you. The next key is conversion, and that's turning that traffic into clients. How you do that, what feeling do they have when the receptionist answers? Does someone answer the phone? This is a problem for a lot of attorneys. They don't have someone answering the phone, or the receptionist is not helpful, or they just say law office when they call. I call a lot of attorneys' office, and the most common thing they say is law office. And that really is not something I as a prospect would be enticed into thinking, oh, this is a person that really is going to understand me. So you have to go from the first point of contact all the way through the process where they write you a check for a deposit. And then there's delivery, where you actually deliver the service. And there's things you can do in delivery, that part, that can actually help many other parts of your business as well. So let's talk first about differentiation. I mentioned Warren Buffett. He owns Geico. That's one of his businesses here in New York. It's their headquarters, so we get a lot of Geico ads. And when I think about a business that's hard to differentiate, it has to be insurance. If you think about it, if you've ever thought about car insurance or something, how much different can a different provider of car insurance really be? That you look at the policies and they pretty much say the same thing. It's a few dollars here or a few dollars there. But here is a company, Geico, that has this slogan: 15 minutes can save you 15% in car insurance. And I would bet that most Americans know this USP. Now, USP stands for unique selling proposition, and most people really know that because they put that out there. They've created this differentiator between other insurance companies in a field where it's even hard to be differentiated than the legal area. And this is sometimes called a value proposition, but what is it that's unique about your business that you can do to differentiate you and make a difference, okay? Some attorneys are very passionate in certain areas. For example, they have this mission to, for example, save people from big banks or something like that. And they may have a passion around that. And, I would challenge you to do some serious thinking around how is your practice different from others, how can it be done? And this is not something you can do in 15 minutes. It takes, maybe going away for a weekend with your staff and hatching this out. How can you be different? And there's ways to do USPs, and we have techniques to help people create great USPs, but it's something that's really very helpful to do in a law practice because there's so many Me Too lawyers. So what does a USP do? So basically a business without a USP is really subject to the whims of the market, and it's pretty easy to knock you off, with a lower price or whatever. You get to become a commodity if you don't have a USP. The other part of a USP, to really create a USP, is you have to define your ideal client and figure out exactly who that is. Now, a lot of attorneys are reluctant to really say that. They say, well, we serve everybody, and we do all different aspects of law. And what I suggest to my clients is to really start with an ideal target. Are they married, single? How old are they? Is it male, female? What's their income level? What kind of problems do they have? Do they have children? And you want to start to define that, because in order to go back and enter the conversation in someone's mind, you have to know what that person is like, and you have to imagine from their standpoint what they're like. And this is really important, and it gets to be easier when you have an ideal client that you have up on your wall, and this is the one you're targeting. Now, once you get that client, you can always, offer them other services, but it's important to start out, and I recommend you only have 2 or 3 ideal clients, and you actually create different marketing channels for each ideal client in order to really talk to them specifically. So the other thing you want to do with your business is identify something unique that you can do, whether it's a certain level of service, a certain time period, is a certain atmosphere in your office. A lot of attorneys' offices are kind of sterile, or maybe they're intimidating. Maybe you can create one that's almost like a living room where people feel very comfortable. Maybe there's a guarantee, A lot of times with personal injury attorneys, of course, they say you don't pay unless we win. So that's kind of their guarantee. But you want to create a unique selling proposition. The next item I want to talk about is positioning. So if you ever Google the term Oracle of Omaha, I'm sure you probably know this, but who appears for this? Well, it's Warren Buffett. And that's because he has created this positioning about who he is based on what he's done and what he's written and what he said, okay? So he has a unique positioning. And positioning, it is the kind of thing that gets people in the door much easier and gets them to convert much easier into what you do. So, Warren doesn't have to, go out there and do a lot of cold calling. And when he is in a meeting and buying a business or whatever he's doing at the time, he's in a great position of authority. And this is something very key. So positioning kind of elevates you and your firm in the mind of the prospect, makes you more valuable, and actually allows you to charge much higher fees than when you're not positioned well. It also makes referrals work better, and it's easier to close somebody. And in order to get seen as an expert, there's a number of ways to do that. You can get mentioned in the news media. You can write a book. You can publish some papers. Doing public speaking engagements is another way. So there's several different ways to get positioning when you're just getting started, or you're just one of the many. But this is something that you want to work on, and we help attorneys do this as well. So then I want to get into traffic, and there's two parts to that. One is the psychology, and this has to do with this kind of pyramid. It's not a pyramid in the picture here, but it comes from a guy named Eugene Schwartz, who wrote a book called Breakthrough Advertising. And when you advertise to people, there's certain levels of awareness that people have, and you ought to be aware of that. Okay, one is at the bottom, where people are most aware of what you offer, and the only choice is how much it's going to cost. What's the deal? That is one level. Probably when you're selling a commodity product, that is where people are. You don't want to be in that position of selling a commodity service. As an attorney, you really want to be in either level 2 through 4 here. Problem 4 is usually like problem where sometimes people think they have a problem, but they don't know the solution. And I'll give you an example of that. It has oftentimes occurs in the field of medical malpractice. And my mother, for example, she had taken a drug for osteoporosis, and a year later, so she had a tooth pulled, and then from the rest of her life, she had intense jaw pain and jaw infections all the time. And it wasn't. She never became aware that there was a solution, that this jaw problem was related to this osteoporosis drug. So a lot of times in the medical malpractice area, you might be broadcasting to a segment of the population where you have to educate the people that there's a solution to the problem. But for most attorneys, people are solution aware. They know the result they want, but not, that you're the one that provides it. So you have to make them aware of you. And sometimes they know that you, market the service, but not sure you're the right person. So this is 2 and 3 is where most people are, most attorneys are in the field of psychology. But let's talk a little bit about the math. So there's a famous guy named Peter Drucker, a famous consultant. He said, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And that is so true of marketing. For most people, marketing is something that they have a difficult time managing because they don't measure it. And there's another famous marketer called John Wanamaker. He said, half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. I just don't know which half. And this is the problem most attorneys have. Dan Kennedy, who is a guru marketer, said the person of business that can afford to spend the most for advertising wins. And what he meant by that, if you can afford to outspend your competitors by either having a very low cost of client acquisition or having a very high margin, you're going to dominate your marketplace. And so, getting a high margin is all about positioning yourself so that you become well-known and trusted as an expert. But the other part of that, getting a low cost of acquisition, is about the math. So for the first many, many hundreds of years of advertising, and until about 2004, most advertising was really a guessing game. There's a few people that have famously, kept their handwritten documentation of what ads worked and what didn't. But for the majority of people, marketing has been very hard to track. If you have a TV ad or a radio ad or a billboard ad, it's very, very difficult to know, if the clients that called you, the prospects that called you came from seeing that ad, or was that one of the many tools along the way. What Google did in 2004 is they created a tool that is probably the most powerful tool ever created for marketers, because now not only can you track exactly who called, but what they were looking for when they called, and you can also track all the steps along the way. So if they saw a banner ad and a paid ad and they went to your website, you can actually track all those steps. And so it's an unbelievably powerful tool. I said it's the most powerful tool ever created. Most people look at it because it delivers nearly instant results if it's done right. But I look at it from an engineering perspective. It's an essential tool to experiment with your message before spending any money on your marketing. So, and any other media. So what you can do with Google, and you can go out and you can experiment with your USP and see, you can actually test which USP works versus another. You can test the type of ads, the visual effect of the ads. You can test the words, the copy, we call it, in the ad, what words appeal to people. And what I know of, sometimes we have marketers that go out and they'll test different display ads, and the one that wins, they'll take that one and go out and create a roadside billboard with the winning ad, because now they know which message is the one that resonates with their target clients, okay? And the other thing that's really interesting about Google, it's the only advertising media that costs less the more successful you are at it, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So why should you really focus on Google? Well, if you look at the world of search, it's foolish to ignore them. Since 2007, they've gone from 400,000 searches a day to last year 6 billion searches per day. But most importantly, 40% of those searches put in a local search term. By local, I mean the name of your town, your city, your village, a street, a zip code, something like that. And so what Google does now is actually they show your ads in the search results based on the IP address of the person doing the search, okay? So if you have a certain IP address based on where you're located, you will see ads based on that address. So this is really, really important to understand that people, especially with the advent of mobile technology, tablets, and these smartphones, people are spending their time on the internet searching for local businesses. Now, another reason that you should be on Google is because your competitors are. And if you look at the what keywords Google makes the most money from, attorney is number 4 and lawyer is number 6. So combine them together, it is where attorneys advertise on Google. And so it's important to be where your competitors are, but it's important to do it better. And the way to do it better is, if you're going to hire somebody, you want them to do this process where they do some keyword research and segment those keywords into related groups. You don't want to have keywords about divorce in with keywords about criminal defense, for example. They ought to be completely separate, and it ought to be set up in the campaign architecture. And also importantly, the ad copy ought to include the keywords. Any ad ought to have the keyword search term in it, a very close variation. And most importantly, those ads ought to go to a specific landing page. In other words, to a page that's related to the search. Now, most attorneys will just send their Google AdWords to a website homepage, which is a mistake because people can get lost there, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. The other parts of setting up your account, you ought to ask your provider to talk about their bid strategy and their budget management, how they analyze a campaign, how they optimize it, and testing. And testing is always important. You ought to always be testing in having more than one ad in each ad group to find out which one's doing better, because you can always improve. One of the reasons you ought to test is because Google charge you based on something they call quality score. And quality score basically is a number from 1 to 10. If you're a number from 7 to 10, you're going to get a cheaper rate. If you're below 5, you're going to be paying the most. And we have a good score, you're paying about 1/3 those that have a poor score. Click-through rate is probably the most important factor for that. Keyword relevancy, ad copy relevancy are very important, and I mentioned landing page relevancy. The other thing that's important to know about this is if your overall account has a lot of poor quality score keywords, your account will be charged at a higher rate overall. So even if you have some good quality scores, if your overall account's bad, you're going to be paying more than the attorney down the street if your quality score is not good. So these are all important things you ought to ask your provider. Go back to talking a little bit about Geico. Geico, I look back and they have tested almost 300,000 ad variations in the past 3 years. An amazing number. You'd think, well, we tested a few ads and they didn't work. Well, here's a company that deals in a space that's very competitive, and they test a lot. And, you know, I did a couple searches there. One's for auto insurance, and you come up with this first ad. And for this particular time that I did this, okay? And there's a number of things you ought to look at. A lot of people think there's only 2 lines in a Google ad. And Google has these things called extensions. And if you don't use them, it actually costs you more. But if you do use them, your ad is actually bigger and takes up more space in the top of the page. And they have these link extensions in the bottoms and these ratings extensions, so you can actually get 4 to 6 lines of text. You can also get location extensions and telephone extensions. So there's multiple extensions that you ought to use in an ad to make it as big as possible. They're free, they don't cost any money, and they ought to be taken advantage of. Another ad you might click on, you notice Google, even though it's, Geico, for the term car insurance quote, they did not give me the same ad. They gave me a completely different ad and talked a little bit different. So they're testing these terms. They're delivering different ads, and both these ads encompass the keyword, okay? So this keyword, auto insurance, is in the title, auto insurance. Here, car insurance. So you've got car insurance quote in the URL extension here. So they include the keyword search term in their ad. Very smart of them, okay? Here's another thing that's very smart. So look at this home page. Now, most of you would think, well, it's a pretty good home page. They should send their ads to the home page. But in point of fact, if you click on their ad, you'll find that they don't send anybody to their home page at all. They actually have a different landing page. So in this case, they have this ad, they send people to this landing page. For this ad, they send people to this landing page. It's slightly different tests. And so they are trying to test which copy works better. You also notice, if you ever click on their ad, that they have no links on this page at all. There's only one thing for you to do. Put in your zip code, in this case, and click the button, Get Quote. Enter your zip code, Get Quote. There's nothing to nothing for people to do except one thing. It's called one decision marketing, and it's a very, very smart thing to do when you're doing AdWords. Now, there's other powerful sources of traffic as well. You know, a lot of people swear by organic search. They think this is the most important thing. This is good if you have a good website. You want to spend some money there, but doing AdWords first and finding which keywords work the best for you, then going out and doing organic is a much better plan of action. YouTube is also a very powerful source of traffic. Now, if I ask people what is the #2 search engine, a lot of times they'll reply Bing. But point of fact, YouTube is the #2 search engine. And so getting your business on YouTube with testimonials and yourself, videos of yourself, very, very important. Facebook is becoming an increasingly powerful source of traffic, and that's because people spend a lot of time on Facebook. And you know, this is something that is going to be very, very powerful. Press releases I want to talk about, retargeting, or sometimes called remarketing, depending on who you listen to. And then there's the traditional sources of traffic like radio, TV, billboards, which are hard to measure. So let me talk about organic search engine optimization. A lot of people, a lot of attorneys invest in this. They're told it's really good. The problem is Google is changing their algorithm for search very, very often. And last year they changed it more than 400 times, so that's more than once a day. And so it's very, very competitive, and it's something that has to be done all the time. It takes a while to work. Google's position is that the only important part of ranking has to do with good content. That is their official position, but there are a lot of people doing things, building links that do help short term, but it's something, like I said, that has to be done continuously, and you don't want to do what's called black hat in any way. But building content is really the key to organic ranking. But if you're going to go to the trouble of doing search engine optimization, you want to have a good website. And most attorneys do not. Their website is written about themselves very often and not about their customers, and they're lacking a lot of things. They're very complex, very cluttered. You look at good websites on the web, ones that are really good, and I've studied a lot of these. They're usually very, very simple in design, like this Geico website. You've got a simple headline here. It's not only a headline, it's a call to action, and it's a place to try to capture information. In this case, they're doing this commitment and consistency thing because they're just asking for one thing at a time. You know, they ask for just a small piece of information. And you'll see this in many good websites. They ask for a name, or then they'll ask for a name and email. And then they'll gradually ask for more information. That's part of building this commitment and consistency. So you want to have simple navigation, and you want to have language that is about the conversation going on in the minds of the prospect. I mentioned Facebook is a great source of ads, of traffic rather, and I mentioned the majority, I don't know if I mentioned this, but the majority of internet usage in the last 18 months has transitioned from mostly desktop to now mostly mobile. So most of the traffic on the internet is now on a tablet or a smartphone. And this is really important to understand. If you have a website that doesn't look good on a smartphone, this is something you really need to address, because this is where people are getting most of their information now, is on their mobile phone. Okay. As far as traffic and advertising, actually Facebook is the only company that has full-size ads on the phone. So, and most of their traffic is mobile. The average user logs in something like 14 times a day, and people actually spend more time on the internet, you know, than they do listen to radio and TV. And so, you know, Facebook is one place where most people, and I used to say most people under 50, but it's increasingly becoming common for grandparents to be on there to keep track of what their grandchildren are doing. And so it's really important to be aware of the space. Facebook tracks what websites, even if they're not logged in, it tracks what websites their users are surfing, just like Google is tracking you. It's creating lists of what your interests are, what books you like, what your interests are. So people are always, you know, hitting that like button for things they like, and they actually, you can go in and look at all kinds of behaviours that people have and interests that people have, and create these what's called look-alike audiences. And you can create an audience of people that could be close to your ideal client that you have. And Facebook's also aligned themselves with what we call big data sources of people with knowledge about you know, financial data. It's also a good source of search engine optimization to have a presence on Facebook. I mentioned press releases earlier. People actually are now, they trust news from the internet more than traditional media. And this is an interesting shift, and it's especially true among the younger people. That's actually a higher level of trust. So having press releases done, people go to Google News now for their news, and press releases can often be a way to get positioning, get you seen as an expert, and it also provides a good link to your website. Now, another thing you want to do is stay top of mind in the people that have visited your website or clicked on that. You want to stay top in mind, because typically it takes about 7 touches. People have to encounter you about 7 times before they really start to trust you. And there's something called remarketing. And what remarketing or retargeting is when somebody visits a website or a landing page of yours. If you use this remarketing tools, and there's a number of them, there's a number of different companies. Google has one, Facebook, and there's other companies like Perfect Audience and AdRoll that all do remarketing. And for example, when I looked at, clicked on this Geico ad, within 10 minutes I looked at Facebook, and you could see a Geico ad now show up on my Facebook feed. And pretty amazing, because what happens is a little cookie or tag gets placed in my web browser, and now wherever I go, I see Geico ads for the next 30 days, okay? And it's not just on the, seeing it back when I look at your website, it's banner ads that show up everywhere. So this is something that really doesn't cost a lot of money, because people don't often click on these ads, but when you look at Google Analytics, if you connect your Google Analytics account to your AdWords account, you can go in Google Analytics and you can see the behaviors of people and what they're doing, and you can see the sequence before there's a conversion. And Analytics actually has a way to show you, if they went to your website, that was 20% of it, of the reason they purchased. Clicking on your ad was 50%. Seeing a remarketing tag was like 5, and oftentimes we see remarketing as like 5x all other things, because that is the final thing that, it may not have been the final click, but it's the thing that really drove them. The fourth of the 5 key essentials of a good marketing is conversions. Now, if you have good positioning, this makes it easier. Getting people to come to you is a lot easier than going out and getting them. So one of the things I talked about earlier is someone answering the phone. If you're serving ads on Google AdWords, you ought to have somebody always answering the phone. There's nothing that puts people off more than going to voicemail. So you ought to always have somebody. And there's services that allow you to do this, that make sure the phone always gets answered. And next, you ought to have a script. Now, my son worked for Geico. They gave them a script when they answered the phone. They knew exactly what to have, and it was tested. And so there was a way to move people through the marketing funnel with this commitment and consistency. A lot of times, getting the phone calls recorded. Now, about probably 10 or 20% of a law office I call, you'll get a message, this phone call is being recorded for quality purposes. And that's really what it is, to really understand, what your receptionist is saying and how the people are reacting, so you can kind of target that. Next is you want to have an offer. So the person that is talking to these prospects, you have to have some kind of an offer. It could be a free consultation, a 10-minute consultation, it could be a $99 consultation, whatever, but it's important to have those people answering the phone know what your offer is. And then the attorney has to have a process to move the prospect into being a client. And a lot of times, they'll sit there and with their yellow legal pad and take a bunch of notes and say, well, it's up to you. But having a good process to help people is very important here. And there's a whole science to moving people along the funnel, and it has nothing to do with sales pressure or anything like that. It's really about understanding what their vision of where they want to be is, where they are currently, where the gap is, and showing them how you can fill that gap with your services. Finally, there's the delivery, where you actually deliver your legal services to them. And this is mostly about you. I say it's all about you, but it's mostly about you. So you have to give good services in order for someone to refer you, obviously, and stay in business. You want to do that. But there are things you can do once you've delivered good service, and that is, one is creating an orchestrated referral system. This can really catapult a lot of businesses depending on what kind of area of practice you have. But if you have a way to refer people, for example, if you have a book to hand out that people can hand out for you, this is a great way to get referrals. And, it's not a salesy approach. A lot of times people say, well, I hate to ask for referrals because it feels like I'm putting pressure on the people. But if you have an orchestrated system to do this, it's actually a way to do this without it being salesy. And we have developed these techniques. There's also, I mentioned, you want to stay top of mind with people that have visited your website, but you also want to stay top of mind with people that have been past clients of yours. And one of the things we always do and recommend doing is having an ongoing, some kind of a newsletter. And could be talking about things in the news, things like Reader's Digest type stories that just engage people. But the point of that is to really keep past and current clients have your name at the top of their mind, so that when they run into one of their friends and their friends has a problem and they say, oh, I know this lawyer and he's really good, you ought to go see him. Now you have an instant way to get referrals. So those are really important. So those are the 5 essential elements of really good marketing that few attorneys really do very well. And what I'd like to do is have an offer for you, and that is offer you a free 30-minute consultation where I can review what you're doing and point out to you exactly how it is that you can make improvements. Or I could do a free audit if you've been doing Google advertising, AdWords, and you're not sure you've been doing a very good job, or if you've been doing an excellent job. We can go through your AdWords account and really show you how you can save quite a bit of money. We typically can save at least 30% and sometimes 50% or more on what people are doing. So one way to do that is you can go to this website link, meetme.so/my name, Paul Beauchemin, or you could send me an email, paul@verdadcara.com, with the subject line free consult or free audit. Or if you'd like, you can give me a call at 888-344-0434. So just as a scarcity offer, I'm just saying this offer is good till Friday at midnight. If you'd like this, send me an email in the next day or so, or schedule a consultation, and I'd be happy to do this for you. If there are any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll stay here for another couple minutes. I hope you have enjoyed this and gotten something of value out of it. As I mentioned, my background is in statistics, but I feel that really I have figured out this marketing process very well and integrated it with my statistics background and engineering background to really solve a lot of problems that practices like yours have. And I know a lot of attorneys I talk to, they just don't want anything to do with their marketing. And so, we offer marketing. We have a full spectrum of marketing services that we offer to attorneys. We specialize in doing digital marketing, and so that is what we work on because, as I mentioned, most of the time people spend is now on the internet. Even they watch movies on their iPads rather than, on TV. And so this is where you have to go to be where your prospects are. You have to go and meet people where they are, where they hang out, and they're hanging out online. And so this is what we do. So feel free to send me an email or schedule an appointment. I'll be happy to talk to you, and I hope that you have enjoyed this, and we will be ending this session for now, and you have a good afternoon.